Well, hello, everyone. It's the mystifying post-production time again, and it's winter over here, but I'm in the very warm company of Sandro and Lionel. So,
Hello.
Sandro,
Hello.
you can say hello.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Noseman. Nice to meet you, Lionel.
Yes, yes, and two good friends. Some with I'm more acquainted than others. And in this month, we're going to talk about the very interesting and fantastic topic of simulations. And we're going to see cloth, soft bodies, maybe some rigid bodies. And let me start with a bit of housekeeping so that we can then let our speakers do their magic. Now, if you want to find out what's on the Maxon channels, what events are happening live, online, and so forth, just go to maxon.net/events, and you will see all the present, past, and future shows. And always go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel to watch these live, or the Maxon YouTube channel. But if you happen to miss some of our shows, which will be a shame if you do, you can always go and watch them on replay on the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. So both channels have them live, but the one that has them recorded is the Maxon Training Team. And of course, subscribe, ring bells, and all that kind of stuff. I'm subscribed, by the way. Go and watch ZBrush tutorials and a lot of excellent content on the ZBrush YouTube channel right over here. And if you want to become a pro certified user, go to the Maxon certification page. And what you could do is you can click this and go down to the certification topics. And here you will find an overview of the type of information we require for someone to become certified or a certified trainer. And this will also serve as a guide if you are learning Cinema 4D to go through these things and see what we consider more essential. Moving on, if you want to get a free t-shirt, just go to the merch store. And for this month, drumroll, the password is Maxon Simulation, all caps, one word. Just put it in here and you just pay for postage and packing and folding and all that nice stuff, and you'll receive your t-shirt. Finally, if you want information, and I purposely put this one over here, if you want to learn more about simulations, you can check out the most fantastic, brilliant tutorials made by the most handsomest Greek, myself, getting started with Cinema 4D simulations and Pyro, and of course, the thousands of other tutorials we have on the new Cineversity. And of course, you can go to the old Cineversity as well, cineversity.com, and check out the tens of thousands of tutorials we have there. A special mention for my very good friend, Dr. Sassy. If you want to learn how the tools work deeply, technically, and get a very accurate technical overview of the tools, check out Dr. Sassy's Tool Time. And although these are very old tutorials, they have withstood the test of time and are still relevant now to as far as the technologies are still exactly the same. And they are fantastic resources for learning. Now, just going to show Sandro's Instagram page. You can see he's doing some very, very interesting stuff. And Dead Set, that's an interesting name. Maybe we need to have a conversation about Dead Set.
Not related to death, actually.
Okay, so without further ado, I think that we're going to start with Sandra. And first of all, I would like you to tell us a few things about you. And if you have something on your screen, you can also share it. Who are you, Sandra? And what do you
I'll
do?
tell you, and I'll be actually able to share on my screen as well. One thing. Well, I'm a proud Maxon's master trainer, actually from this year, I suppose, a newcomer. and I teach computer graphics for quite some time, and have had the pleasure of graduating many students. Best of them work with me in a wonderful studio that is called Vertex CGI. I don't know if you can see my screen right now. So this is just briefly our Instagram page, and we're doing VFX. We're doing most viewed videos actually, and we're doing VFX with Maxon tools, which is quite handy considering what we're going to discuss now. So this
Beautiful
is
work up there.
about myself. Yeah, and we can just go into presentation, perhaps. What do you say? Oops.
Yes, I think it's time for Sandro to show us some of his magic.
It's
So,
time. Okay,
let's go. What are you going to show us?
Yeah, let's go. So tonight, basically, we're going to break down this video. So because I'm doing VFX at the moment, mostly, I prepared a VFX scene, a VFX shot, exactly that one for tonight's purposes. Yes, with simulation. So there it is. We're going to break down this exact project. And while this is not the most beautiful piece I ever delivered, we have many interesting things going on here. So obviously, for example, we have this cloth interacting with an invisible collider, which is animated with motion clips, by the way. Then obviously we have some tearing. We have some pyro simulation and this ignition with temperature and density. And we have this material change, and obviously it is all controlled with a vertex map. And finally, we have these candies, these rigid bodies, and they are stacked upon this previously cached simulation. So spoiler alert, although I tried to do many things as unified as possible, like in one sim, in one pass, I decided to actually layer this part of simulation. And I will tell you exactly the reasoning for such decision real quick. So here's a very quick presentation, kind of presentation to get us up and running. So let's imagine that, okay, you have a complex task that you have to solve. You need to make a project, and you make a checklist for you to follow this checklist. Well, I recommend you to compose this checklist, minding that there is work to be done that is asset related and scene related. And overall, assets are something that you can pack it, deliver, you can reuse it, you can send it to someone so he will use your asset, while scene related thing is what you do exactly in a scene with those assets. And this is good to mind that. So asset-related things are models plus textures, characters, rigs, grooming, procedural setups, simulation setups. And scene-related stuff are layout plus camera animation, lighting, rendering, compositing, simulation. So this is an interesting thing. So simulation is present in both mediums, and that's important. Then grading and sound design, and basic logic behind it is that if you have more scenes, then you have more scene-related work to be done. If you have more scenes, it does not necessarily mean that you have more asset-related work to be done. And this approach is useful not only if you're an artist, but maybe if you're a producer and, okay, you're asked to make a video 30 seconds long, and then suddenly it becomes 20 seconds long, and your client expects you to cut your budget in third. But because of timing changed, maybe this span of work reduced, but not necessarily this one. So maybe the total amount of work will not change a lot. So this is a good logic to refer to.
I have a comment here.
Yeah, let's go.
I totally disagree. Be disorganized, just messy. Don't plan anything. That way you have a good excuse of working less and wasting more time. Come on, what are you talking about? That was a joke, by the way. I don't want anyone to take this seriously. Yeah. You're too organized, Sandro. You're too organized.
Yeah, Noseman reading some new uncommon books, exploring unknown lens. Okay. And now, this is related to any project, basically. But in this exact project, I just followed the same logic. And asset related, I had here this vertex map setup that I made, like, regardless of what scene would be, what timing would be, what aspect ratio and composition would be. I knew that I had to create this vertex map setup that will further drive my cloth tearing and pyro ignition and so on material. And I made, of course, some models and so on. And surprisingly, it took me 65% of time. So, because scene related, I made tracking, animation, simulation and caches, render and compositing. And I also made those sound effects. And when you're in such situation, you actually would like to reuse your setups, your assets as much as possible. So then you optimize and compensate for this time that you used. Those are introductory things, just so you understand. The last one picture I'm going to show you is that simulation, which we and you guys are going to discuss this month, is all about iterations. So obviously, first thing you need is speed to iterate more quickly. Like this is an obvious one, but less obvious one is that you would actually also need stability and predictability, and that consists of how much you know what you're doing, know some difficult solvers. And for anyone who would like to use Pyro, Noseman's series on Cineversity is an absolute must-watch. Absolute must-watch. So that's the thing. But it also, Maxons in Cinema 4D still are developing many things, and they're becoming better and better and better and better. Speed is already fantastic. Now, how you add complexity in your simulations, like for example, in this one, quite a complex simulation, lots of stuff going on. So it's tearing, it's ignited, and some candies fall out. They all interact with each other. Like two approaches that you can imagine are layering and step by step. So for example, you made one simulation of this cloth on a character, and then you bake it, then you layer something upon it, and then you bake it, and then you do something even more. So that way you stuck things upon each other. Then there is another approach, like completely opposite, which is unified. You try to load as much different elements in one scene, in one simulation scene, and then you try to bargain with them so that they do not blow out your computer and they work actually together with each other. And the right approach is actually using both, finding the right proportion for your actual project. And we will come through this. Well, so now let's go actually on this project, scene by scene. I will show you some things that I performed first, those technical things, that how we make this setup. And then I will show you a couple of things, how you put different bodies into the simulations, like cloth or maybe soft bodies, rigid bodies, and Pyro. How do they interact with each other? By what rules? A couple of tips and tricks, and then we will quickly go through the breakdown of the scene by steps. I will also talk a little bit about tracking and compositing, so because it is a VFX shot. All right. Let's begin, for example, with this one. So let's say, okay, let's see how it works. So this is we can make it from scratch, like, without any hesitation. Let's just drop a plane. Go like that. And in order to make fixed points, I have to make this editable, and then I simply... By the way, I didn't ask if everything's all right. Maybe you had something to add up to what I said before.
Yes, don't worry. We'll shout if anything happens.
It looks fine. Maybe you could just on your top right corner hide. Streamlabs is sharing a screen.
Thank you so much. It was driving me crazy just as much.
That's no.
Okay, so we add this cloth right here. It's ready, but there I go and make these fixed points. So you guess what is happening now? We have this, okay. I will also add a collider plane already because I'm going to show you how to set up this tearing setup with vertex maps. And this would be just a quick example. So this would be our collider. Okay. So quickly up and running. I add vertex map through tags, which is possible since latest versions. It should be with fields. This freeze, which is by default, we will leave. I will quickly add a spherical field, which would be a seed object for the growth of our vertex map area. So here we have it. Okay. Maybe here I can just select the growth mode. And that's what's happening. Okay. And you can actually control the strength of this effect by controlling these two parameters. And you can see, so the radius is not big enough for vertices to catch on with each other. So they are way too far away from each other. So then you just try to find a proper balance. I will add some more frames. So that's the thing. And let me please take a hint on what I'm doing here. Oh, yes, quite obviously. I will now add a random field to make this growth more disorder, how to make it more natural. We can put it to subtract, or maybe add it in a folder, which would be subtract. So now we can stack some effects upon here, like maybe curves effect. And basically, you make those two setups, and they fight against each other. So maybe you will.
Can I give you a bit of advice? Can you turn off the use the formed object right on the top?
Oh, that's a good idea for now. Actually, we will need it later. But now it basically refers that okay, so it will expand just as this plane stayed untouched, undeformed by the simulation, which is good for now for our purposes. Let me add another point. Yeah, and you can immediately see, so now it grows in another manner. So now it has some, how do you call it? Pattern. Yeah. A pattern that is more interesting, just like that. So that's one thing. And what effects you can drive with it? Well, let's take a look. Well, obviously you can do mix animation. That'll only drive, and you can see immediately what's happening. So the thing is static, and I'm preferring to use with force now, but you can exaggerate it, and it would be more contrasty. That is one thing. You can make it actually less. Another thing. So, okay, we want it to tear in the region of growing vertex map, for example. Let's try to add this vertex map right here. But now, actually, the yellow area which grows will now define this tear past. So actually, I should make it lower, and it will apply to this yellow area, while the rest, the red area, will have this 120 tear past.
Am I allowed to insert various little comments?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We will make. Yeah.
So the tearing happens upon stretch. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That's why I'm going to use.
But your stretching is 0. So the cloth won't stretch enough to reach the 105. If you go to the stretching parameters and add a bit more to the stretching,
that's a good idea.
Then the cloth will stretch, and therefore the tearing will commence.
Yeah, but now it stretches only because of the gravitation, which is good, and Noseman is absolutely right. So you can see what's happening right now. But I would also like to force it, to brute force it a bit, just by setting up this target length to 80, and it basically means that all colored yellow will shrink to a target length of 80.
Very smart.
And
That's very smart. Yeah.
this might be a little bit too excessive, but you can see what's happening, and it's organic. And oh my god, I'm already quite satisfied. Oh, okay.
I didn't think of that, so I'm gonna turn off your stream right now.
Okay.
That's actually very smart. Yeah.
More to go.
Good. Keep going. Keep going.
Now that's the way. For example, we have that. Now, what if I want this very vertex map also to drive my Pyro simulation? Yeah, let's not wait too long. We will just simply slap it on and add it up. And tonight, I'm not going to focus on solver settings and basics, and because there's so much of it. You just go to Cineversity and watch Noseman's playlist, which is huge, and you should really read carefully through the help. But instead, I'm going to concentrate on how those systems relate to each other, how they influence each other. So pretty quick, we can add an emission map right here. So you can see, obviously, and it is happening what is expected, right? So now we have these flames growing in the area of this vertex map. Okay, and okay, so this surface is too thick. Maybe I will just make it quickly like that. A little less density so we can see more flames. Also, what I prefer to do is to go to my density dissipation so it dissipates quicker a little bit. So everything else you want to leave default. Like always try to leave most of things default and you'll be good. You'll be good. It also not only about Pyro simulation. You better work with scale that is closer to a default voxel size. It is also pretty much related to cloth simulations. Like Cloth Engine in Cinema 4D, the new Cloth Engine, is much more dependent on topology and the density of your meshes than on everything else. And like the only thing you have to tweak is substeps and density of your meshes. Everything else, okay, secondary. So, but what if I want it to flame only through the edges? Well, did you know that we can actually query this vertex map? This, for example, I will call 1. I will immediately create another one vertex map. That'll be called 2. And let's go also use fields. And now we will add one vertex map to another vertex map. I will delete this thing. And here, oh my God, I would have to change also this here too, but I will turn it off for now, my emitter. So let's take a look what's happening. This one is queried. I also would have to, of course, I would also have to change it over here. Excuse me.
Yeah, vertex maps are name-based, so if you change the name,
that's right.
It will lose their. That is.
Should have made it first. So okay, so we queried this one. We can now make it average, and it blurs. Basically, it is your way to blur your vertex map. If you're completely satisfied with it, but you would like to blur it, you just put it in another one. But in this case, you should always leave this use deformed points on because it actually now samples it from the deformed mesh. Yeah, it looks at this mesh deformed with those vertex parameters and uses it as an input. Okay, so we leave it right here. And then, well, did you know, gentlemen, that there are 2 types of people? And I'm the curves guy, not the levels, not range map. I do not understand concepts of these tools, but I tend to use curves to make effects like these. So, and there we have it. So now it's from the edge, and we can make it smaller like this.
The two types of people are the people that use curves and then everyone
Levels.
else. No, everyone else. I'm the curves person. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, this is an old thing Andrew Kramer used to say. So there are curves and levels in After Effects. Yeah, so there we have it. And now if we plug it right into this emission map, like 2, you can see what is happening here. So now, yes, now we have this crawling kind of fire, like that just climbs onto the surface. And well, if you'd like, in this case, if you'd like it to be more obvious, more flamey, you can simply add your thickness, because in this case, well, if you turn on your voxels, you would see that it struggles to sample those deformed regions of the mesh to generate temperature and density. So that is why. But if you will reduce your voxel size, it'll be enough for more flames to be generated. We will not do it now for the case of this example. So this is good enough. This is a good beginning. Now, I will tell you about a very interesting thing right now. I'm not sure if I would able to show it easily, but okay, let's start like that. In scene options, I can set gravity to 0, and most obviously you see a few changes. So cloth continues to tear because we utilized this, how do you call it, target length to stretch it. But you can see that there are no flames coming up because buoyancy is actually gravity dependent, and you can now choose to add gravity, like here, like an Cinema 4D object. We will leave those default settings, but now you can choose to go to cloth, for example, and exclude this gravity force from your settings. So this way, your cloth will stretch, your flame will rise up, because it's a gravity dependent effect. But you can see that torn cloth pieces are not falling. So this is a kind of how do you call it, agility and possibilities that you have within Cinema 4D. Like, you can choose what influences what, and this concept is very important to understand when you come to this setting. And let us see what does that means. Pyro in the cloth. If you want Cinema 4D's Pyro system to apply forces to the clothing, then enable this option. Well, I'll tell you what, I think this is a misleading article, because I actually found out that you actually exclude it. Like, by default, Pyro should influence your cloth and other things. The only thing you'd have to do is to set up your fluid force factor above 0. Now let's try something like that. Let's try something like that, and perhaps we will immediately get advection. It might be a little hard because pieces have to be torn and we don't have enough of this flame present. But if I make my fire thicker and I increase this fluid force factor, I'll crank it up to 10. We'll see what is happening. Perhaps we will see. Well, I actually pre-rendered some things just in case it wouldn't be able to show correctly. But okay. I think you can see it. So this cloth mesh actually rises up. So it is lifted up, and it is not lifted up by geometry. It is actually lifted up by this Pyro simulation. And there is a way for me to prove it to you. I will prove it. I'll prove it to you. So, okay. So now I will have, okay, I would need this spherical field to be bigger like that. So now we made a setting where we have cloth. Yes, pyro emitter underneath the cloth, and you can see that these pieces of cloth are actually elevated by the pyro force. Yes, it is happening, and you can crank it up even more. The effect will become more obvious. Yes, now you can clearly see that clothes are advected upwards by this pyro force. And it works not only with clothes. Now, let me show you now a couple of these things. Okay. I have, in another scene, I have rigid bodies. There they are. Okay. And you can see that they have custom initial velocity, and you can tell it by this yellow line that we have here. There it is, very handy. You can see where it's pointing. Let's see what will happen now. So you can see that how those fluids, how those smoke is pushed by this dynamic rigid body. They immediately work as a collider for your pyro simulation, and you can see what a beautiful effect it creates. So this is cool. This you should mind, but also let's now go and set up our fluid force factor above 0, so it'll be 1. Let's see what will happen. Immediately they are advected, but you can see what happened. Like, this is a complete mess. So maybe you would need to lower this up. Be careful. Be careful. Let's see what's the difference. No, it is still definitely way too much. And I found out that it actually has something to do with rigid body masses. So by default, it is it uses custom density. If I change it to custom mass, you will immediately see the difference. Okay, so now the difference is most obvious, and I can work with more normalized values. So I can increase my fluid force factor and maybe decrease my mass up to 0.02, 0.2. Okay, and now you can see that, oh, yes, indeed they are advected. I crank it up even more. Yeah, so now they are almost like neutrally buoyant because of these raising flames. So this is an interesting effect. The same way it works for the cloth. And finally, you can actually try to mix everything together so that you have cloth, you have pyrocene, and you have rigid bodies all doing something with each other. And you can see right here, so we have our flames that will come back just in a second, I believe so, because they are also driven by this vertex map. Pretty same setup. Cloth is torn by these rigid bodies that fall, and some of those rigid bodies are advected then back upwards. And you can see what is happening to the cloth. Cloth is also being advected by those flames. So it can create you an interesting effect. Now, the downside of this approach, obviously, is that it increases calculation time. You have to manage much more variables, and you have to cache it, then think, then maybe have some rest, then recache it, tweak some settings. As I told you, simulation is all about iterations. Now, yes, that's the thing. And regarding cloth, I will show you a funny iteration that I had with too much advection. So here I have my setup. It's starting to burn. And then you can see that this cloth is just carried away upwards. Like, so much of this fluid force factor is present here in the scene. And right here, yeah, you can see a bit more detailed simulation, but also this advection is far too strong. And you can see what will happen now. Oh, you saw that? So I have these torn pieces that continue burning, which is absolutely beautiful. And I tried to search for this effect, but unfortunately couldn't preserve it.
And we have a naked ghost this way.
Yes, exactly. But no one sees it. It's invisible. So
yes.
Not much of a problem.
All girls are naked, actually.
Now, I happen to run into some troubles, and I believe they are somewhat related to my when simulation scene is loaded into GPU VRAM. Because take a look, gentlemen. I will briefly show you what happened with me. So I have this cached scene, cached Pyro simulation. Everything is beautiful. Let's see once again. So it's exactly the same setup. Everything is cached and torn, right? Now the second one. Pay attention to the character of flames. It is much less of them. Now the only difference between these two scenes is that I activated rigid bodies that are here. They're not even interacting. But it completely changed the way how voxels expand, and you can tell it by this bounding box. And an obvious thing, I actually managed to resolve it by going to Pyro, 3 settings, and increasing padding to 2. So it has more of a, how you call it? Yeah, it expands more excessively. Yeah, and you have to actually dive deep into such settings. By the way, another cool thing before we will start. Do we have any questions yet? Tell me, please.
Oh, there's nothing. Yeah, there's
No.
a
Unbelievable.
flame war going on.
They're fighting on Blender.
Yeah, I want to say something generic. Every tool is good as long as you know how to use it, and it does the work you want it to do. I prefer Cinema 4D. We prefer Cinema 4D. We offer a suite of products that allows you to go a long way in creating amazing artwork and VFX and motion graphics and all that. But at the same time, around 500 years ago, people would, 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, people would just grab a rock and break other rocks and make magnificent statues. So whatever tool works for you, there is no, this is not good, that is not good. This is, we have a very reasonably priced suite of products, which the people that use it work fine, and you know, they have sane and healthy businesses, and they enjoy their lives and so forth. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that's my tool of choice, and you know, whatever I want to do, I can do it in the Maxon One products. And I think this applies to Sandro and Lionel, and they wouldn't dare to say anything other than that. So yeah, you can continue the discussion. I mean, I am
yes, I'd be actually glad to, because I have a thing to or two to say about it. I actually had the pleasure to teach on the very same course about visual effects, like adding graphics into videos, integrating into videos. We had alternative pipelines with Cinema 4D and Redshift, Cinema 4D and Octane, and then Blender plus Cycles. And what can I tell you? Well, you better go out, try different applications, and then you compare for yourself. They are very different of their nature. Cinema 4D is obviously not free, but as Nosman said, reasonably priced for what it delivers.
Nothing is free, Sandro.
Yes,
the most
expensive, time.
The most expensive, exactly. The most expensive, non-reimbursable asset is time. So I'm 57 years old, going to 58. I know that very well. Every second of my life, I do something which is not productive or good, I won't get it back. There is no, I want my refund for time. So choose your tools wisely, and whatever makes your project happen, use it. And as long as you're happy with what you're doing, it's great. And no, I didn't say the rock is Blender. What I'm saying is that any tool that does your job, that is the good tool. Oil paints and a brush, that's a great tool. We've seen quite a few masterpieces over the last centuries done with a rudimentary canvas, some lead paint where it killed most of the artists, paintbrush. That's it.
Completely
to
agree. Totally agree. Yeah, I'll show you a quick tip real quick before we go to the breakdown of the scene. So imagine you have this simulation of new rigid bodies and it is cached. But what if you'd like to change your clones on render? On render. So there is one workaround if you actually put something inside of these platonics, but that is quite crazy. So then you just turn those invisible. But another approach, which is actually quite cool, is that you cannot simulate rigid body on matrix. It is impossible. You can simulate a cloner even in multi-instance mode. You can simulate, yeah, I believe. But then you can scatter matrix upon this cached cloner simulation. And in this case, I made this matrix, object, surface, and count 1. So it creates one matrix. How do you call it? Matrix is basically an assembly of things, right? It creates many matrix points, one per object, and then you can just compensate it by moving it to the center, like optically. And there you go, you have matrix scattered upon your cached clone simulation. And then guess what? You can go grab your redshift object tag, go to particles, and there you have it. You can change your cloners at render time, which can be really handy, really handy. Just imagine the level of control that you'll have. Now, this is the way of combining best of two worlds. Like this is all about my presentation is about tonight. Okay, so I showed you all the technical stuff that took me 65% of time on this project, research and tests, and how actually those simulations live together. Now I will guide you through that what I made as scene-related work. And I have prepared scenes that describe actually stages. Well, first of all, tracking wasn't possible to do in Cinema 4D because of the footage. Wasn't even possible to do in PF track. And this is actually my approach. So first thing that I try on any footage, actually, the most automatic one, I just go and throw it into After Effects 3D camera tracker. And it worked okay. It worked decently. It generated most of those continuous patterns for tracking. And by the way, Noseman also has this wonderful series on Cineversity on tracking with fancy stuff, with survey shots, definitely worth watching. I will just go in brief right now. So After Effects brought me best results right now, and this is because of the footage. You can see that we have many repetitive tiles, no manual markers that are easily user tracked. And my day-to-day logic is that I start from After Effects if it doesn't give me good results, because there's no big amount of control over the result. You can, of course, obviously insert a horizontal angle of view, but result would be far from being perfect anyways in After Effects. If you need a perfect tracking, perfect match move, you would like to learn some other softwares. And Cinema 4D has great solutions for tracking. Actually, Blender has surprisingly great tracking module.
Yes.
But we also use in our day-to-day work a program called PF Track. It is dedicated, and usually if I can't do something in After Effects, I then jump into PF Track, and then I combine some pre-automated approaches. If manual approach is needed, okay, then I close PF Track and I go into Cinema 4D, because it is more convenient, more cozy for me to make my user trackers and so on. But not in this case. Not in this case. You see, it is important to have many tools at your disposal. And in each unique situation, a different combination will work actually best. So knowing many tools, knowing many things is a professionalism, but ability to find the best combination of tools, of techniques and steps, this is actually mastery.
Yeah.
Okay, so After Effects totally brought it to me. And then I believe I started from setting up my walk, and I will quickly show you this stuff. We will also make it from scratch real quick because it's super fun to interact with Mixamo. Yeah, that's right. So if you'd like to make a ghost like that, you just go straight to Mixamo. You grab this naked guy because he's the best and he's one piece. He's one piece. That is important. Oh, well, it'll actually save you some time. And then you just go and maybe merge this one. Let's go. Where is he? Oh, there he is. And I download him basically one time with the skin, like with the mesh, right? T-pose. Same logic applies if you rig custom character inside Mixamo. Okay, we do not need no material right now. There he is. There he is. The only thing I will do is mind that, okay, so we have this Mixamo rig 1 hips, Mixamo rig 1 spine, and I prefer to go to naming tool because I believe in older versions of Cinema 4D, when you made Mixamo control rig, it was important and crucial so that it's not Mixamo rig 1, but Mixamo rig just like that. So, and I middle mouse click to select all the hierarchy. I go to my naming tool. If you're doing character rigging, you should be super familiar with naming tools and so on, and working with hierarchies. You replace the name. Okay, we have Mixamo rig. Very good, very well. So there is our guy, and I can quickly go and make a motion clip. I remember once I was struggling with creating motion clips and mixing Mixamo animations, and everyone in the internet did it wrong, like completely wrong. They downloaded each time with the skin, with the mesh, because it is not needed. You already have your mesh. Now you go and you download it without skin. So you have only bones, and I haven't. I can choose to merge once again.
As a side note,
Yep.
the September Demystifying Post-Production was me and Joe Herman talking about motion capture techniques. And if you go to the News University, Joe Herman did a motion capture techniques series and talks about all these things, how you can use motion clips, how you can use the Mixamo control rig and all that. So all the information is on Cineversity. Thank you.
Nowadays, but there was nothing like that my time.
That's
and
why we did it.
only EJ, he
Yes.
literally saved me then. Like, he was the only one who provided the correct technique. So once again, I downloaded. Now I have only bones. I can actually place it wherever I like. I would like to go to my naming tool. It'll be important later on. I'll replace name. And once again, I go and I create this add motion clip. And I simply name it, okay, walk. And this walk that I have here is actually, I can open now in timeline. And now I can actually delete this instance of my bones because I already have this loaded into my motion clips system. And I can basically now do the montage, the editing stuff. So, okay, there he goes. There he goes. I can choose to maybe make a few loops. Okay, let's say there are a couple of loops. Then I can stack upon that. So that's the thing. You download more animations, you stack them upon each other. It works like Nova. Let's go. So that's the turn. Once again, I will go to my naming tool. Should probably make a shortcut for it already. Add a motion clip. That would be my turn. Good. Delete it. Don't need this anymore. Let's go. And you guess what is happening now? He just, okay, he beautifully turns. Yes, he beautifully turns. And there you are. And because I have this walking on place kind of walk, I can now just animate him while he's walking. Let's say I already did it. Not that important now. I'll show you how to create this beautiful garment that we have on our ghost. Where is it? Yeah, it's like the easiest Halloween costume, isn't it? Still not so easy to create. We'll show you pretty quick. So now, if you'd also like to stack your Mixama control rig, I would recommend to turn off the animation like that temporarily by pushing this icon in your nonlinear animation editor. Jesus. Yes, and now you can simply go to reset bind pose, and because you disabled your animation, you're good to go with character object. You go Mixama control rig, and actually, there was a time when I watched Jonas's video on that, like once a week, because you just have to get used to creating this rig. You just then press adjust. It's almost like a second nature. Holding 7, you move your knees forward, so they're moving without children. Moving without children. Go animate. We go retarget master. Mixamo rig, just as I told you, and it was really important. Retarget all. Weight transfer. Drop this mesh, transfer weights, and now we have it. There he is. I can hide my bones. And the cool thing is that I can now turn my animation back on. And there we have it. We have an opportunity to alter this animation and to stock and layer keyframed animation upon that. The only downside to this technique is that, okay, mind coordinates of your controllers, they are always 0, 0, 0. So although they are obviously traveling through space, you can clearly see that, okay, we have no changing transforms, and this is because they are all now relative to animation beneath. So that is one thing to mind. Now I will quickly show you what I made here. Oh, I forgot how to show how to create this cloth. Okay, I can show it right now without any problem. So we have this moving guy, and he already has his character rig. Oh, and I also created a selection object. Oh, smart me. So this allows you basically to create custom selections of object, which is really handy when you're doing character animation because you have so many variables to manage. Then you can quickly select them, put on some keys, and so on. But right now, in this case, about the design of the cloth, let's now just turn that off. Temporarily turn off our walking motion clips. Okay, so he's still good. Now, if you're starting such costume with a plane, think twice because you're gonna have those corners. It would be a bad design. You need to start with a disc. You need to start with a disc, but remember to mind the topology because in Cinema 4D cloth system, it is very topology dependent. So this won't be a good topology for us. In this case, I simply extruded it and then I made another topology, which is more uniform with this new closed polygon hole in the patch mode. And you can then turn it so it's correct. Okay, beautiful. And you can now choose to make it even more uniform, I don't know, by ironing it a few times and then maybe fitting circle. You should get yourself familiar with modeling tools, regardless of what you're doing.
The general idea with our cloth simulation is because the edges are the mechanisms by which the cloth bends, the system uses the edge as the pivot point. That's why by controlling how your topology looks, you essentially are telling the simulation and your cloth to bend in very specific ways. And this is, there was a question earlier about how to make specific tears and all that. Make sure that you can add that information in your cloth, which when it's rendered, it looks smooth, but the polygons define where the tearing is going to happen, where the bending is going to happen. So what Sandro is showing now is an excellent way how to control the way your simulation is going to go.
Yes, that's right. But not only that, you should also mind that all solvers, as I believe I mentioned in the beginning, are unique. And yes, Cinema 4D is the most topology dependent that I know. But when you know it, you can actually then control in a better way with your topology flow, with your topology density. While, for example, Marvelous Designer is, I believe, a particle based, and they are spreaded uniformly regardless of topology, and you get other types of effects. Now Vellum in Houdini is whole other kind of story, and you get different kinds of effects. Now, in order to have a good and nice cloth shape in Cinema 4D, just leave it quad based. Really, leave it quad based, leave it as uniform as possible. Of course, then your tears would be quadratic and so on, but you then should find a good proportion. Maybe you break the topology in the place where your tear should appear, but all the rest should be uniform and quad based, and this is my recommendation.
Was that an answer to Pakulia? Because that was a question. C4D cloth sim, is it better to use triangular topology rather than quads? And the answer, just as Sandro said, no. You could use a triangular topology for very specific kinds of simulations, but in general, quads, as far as I understand, will evaluate better in most cases.
I can show it like immediately just by utilizing this poke capsule, and you will immediately see what is happening. So you already see that, well, of course it has something to do with the Phong shading, but you can see that we have those, just as Noseman said, like edges are a pivot point here. And even if you then place it in a subdivision surface, you can see what's happening. We have those waffles, right? How do you call it? And if I turn it off, on the other hand, and leave it quad based, I then put it into subdivision surface. It is smooth because subdivision surface, Catmull Clark's smoothest, right? Quad based stuff. That's what it does. Actually, Pakulia is my guy, my friend, so I can answer you tomorrow, anytime. Okay. The only thing I always recommend to actually define on start is density and substeps. Like, for example, you can see what is happening. So we do not have enough details right now. It is way too rigid, way too like almost cardboard like, right? So maybe I would choose to subdivide it even more. And now we can see, we can mind our shading. Okay, there it is. But if you'd like to achieve tiny wrinkles, almost a silk-like texture on it, then you would need to subdivide it yet even more. So it's really dense, just like that. And you should define it. Okay, you can clearly see the difference right now, like immediately. Like that's the whole other story. And it worked because I have cranked up substeps. It's 44, right? And if I leave it on default, you can see what's happening with that kind of density. It'll just, it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't catch up with the collider. So you would need to crank up your substeps, maybe iterations, maybe collision passes. And you should define it in the beginning. Because otherwise, when you decide to change your topology density, like everything will work differently, like completely differently. For for the sake of this presentation, I will go back. I will not use that much of a density. Okay, we will leave it as is. Previous option. Now, the other thing I like to do is, okay, I have it. The costume is wonderfully made. Now what I prefer to do is to set up my initial state just simply by going here and this current state to object. And then now I have this already started. And actually in industry, when you simulate something, when you simulate a cloth, you actually prefer to simulate in your scene starting from a T-pose of your character. And because of that, you make negative frames and you start simulating from negative frames. So that way, when your camera time starts, your character is already in pose, but he went there from a T-pose. He simply went to action pose, to his first action pose, and simulated cloth followed through. But I prefer not to create negative frames, like for simple VFX shots that are single camera. That way, now I have my initial state from here. That's the new shape of my mesh. Now I can drop my cloth tag once again, and now we basically... Why is that happening that way? What happened? Lionel, how would you do that? We agreed that if I run into trouble, I will...
That might be the cloth you deactivate, but somewhat is still here.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. We're good to go.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. There was some rudimentary collider. Okay, so now I turn back my animation and this animation in my character null. And I'm not explaining what I'm doing right now because you, my viewers, should already be familiar with animation graph and dope shit, I suppose. And now we're good to go, and now you're good to cache your simulation. Now, do you remember that we set up our vertex map growth effect? Now you can clearly see how it works. So I have my simulated cloth. Character walks right here. Then he turns to us, and then there's this animated field that slightly touches his simulated cloth. And let's jump straight into the next scene. Where is it? Where is this? Okay, I'll go directly to my tear setup, so I have something cached there, so you can see basically everything. Yeah, there it is. And I have it already cached. So mind how now... by the way, I set up my cloth belt. And this is important because otherwise, dependent on friction and stuff, it might slide a little bit. And I wanted it to be fixed, but to a certain point. So I also animated influence. So you will see now, when the cloth starting to tear, this cloth belt influence lowers. And it's free again to go. Let's see how it works. Okay. Pay close attention to how vertex map is animated. It touches, immediately it tears apart because you remember the setup we made with target length, so it brute forces stretchiness. That is what's happening. So that is what's happening. That's what I did. So even before setting up my Pyro simulation, I decided, okay, this is somewhat of timing and tempo. I would like my cloth to tear and vertex map to growth. And so I solved this one problem. I defined this speed of vertex map growth. I defined, okay, this is somewhat I would like it to tear anyways. And then I went straight further to setting up Pyro simulation. Let us go to... Well, maybe to that one, seemingly cached out. But it is basically the same thing I showed you before in a different dedicated scene. So here we have it. Oh, yeah, we have it cached. We have it cached, and I believe we already have it upresed. Oh, okay. So the first option was actually something like that. Not so many details, but it tears and cloth tears. Let me see. Enforces. Yeah, so some advection is taking place, but a really small one. So in this iteration, I decided to keep this fluid force factor relatively low. But still, some advection is taking place. I was just trying to find the right balance of what is happening here, and you can clearly see that. Okay, so this vertex map growth. Now, if you're experiencing troubles and maybe you do not have a powerful machine at your disposal, I would recommend you to bake Alembic. And actually, at some point, I baked cloth to Alembic. It also bakes your vertex maps, so they are not calculated each time. And it means it also basically fixes them if they drive something else. So in this case, you might say that, okay, Pyro simulation is stacked upon a cloth simulation. No, it isn't. It happens at the same time. So this is a unified approach. Pyro simulation actually influences how cloth is being torn, how cloth is being deformed, and so on. And then when you created your cache and you're happy with the overall form that you get, you may choose to upres your scene. And this is absolutely amazing that Maxons added it, because now we already have our art directed Pyro simulation, and we can choose to make it more detailed and beautiful, just like that.
Can I interject?
Yeah, let's
What
go.
you just said, I don't want people to miss what you just said. Upresing doesn't simulate faster. That's number one. Number two, maybe a bit faster. Number two, it requires that you bake your velocity. If you don't bake your velocity, upresing won't work. The secret word that Sandro just said is art directing. What upresing allows you to do is get the general form of your pyro using a low resolution, your speed, everything. And then the upresing is going to use that data to create more detailed smoke, fire, and all that, so that you can art direct it using a low resolution and then let it upres. The upresing will take a significant amount of time, as if you were simulating at the higher resolution. Maybe it's a bit faster, but don't expect it to be 10 times faster than doing it directly. But at least you have the same look of your fire. That is the objective of upresing.
Yeah, and you have those things already defined. The character of your simulation is already defined. And if you simply changed the resolution of voxels, everything would be different, like completely. So that's the purpose of upresing. You make decisions on a relatively low scale, then you add up more details. Yes, it takes time, but it saves you time also as well. Just not as expected. Maybe you can see how it tears, how beautiful. You see how now this part, absolutely amazing. Like I love it. Those holes growing up. So, and this is because part of this cloth is actually uplifted by those flames. I might haven't been able to show it very well. It is very much composition dependent, but now in this stream you can see actually what a gorgeous result I have achieved with this cloth tearing. Well, this is cool.
I have a question for you, Sandro.
Yeah.
How many iterations did you do to find your perfect fire and all that? Because I don't want, a lot of people think you just add the components, press play, but you have to remember that there's always more improvements you could do while you're working to find the right setting. So how many iterations did you do to get to your final look?
Something like 10, and only because beforehand I watched the whole Pyro series, and I already made all those separates scenes with tests and R&D, research and development. So this is why 10. So it is relatively quick, actually. And so
Yes.
just when you're simulating, you just have to stop at one point. Okay, it is good enough. You decide it is good enough. Please stop. Let's go further. Yeah. So I have some mistakes here. Like you can clearly see that this cloth falls faster than Pyro emitter follows it. This is not that bad, actually. Composition wise, you have to prioritize. Like every creative task, every task in life is in some sense a prioritization task. Okay, so we have that cached beautifully, and then I decided to stack upon some rigid body simulation. And I will tell you now why haven't I decided to simulate all at once, like rigid body with Pyro, with cloth, exactly because of prioritization. Please take a look at the final result with me once more. So here we have most part of the scene. We have only cloth, only the cloth, nothing else happening. But this is your anticipation. This is your intro to the story, if you might call this a story. So maybe you should prioritize the overall look of your cloth. That is why I decided, okay, anyways, I would need those finer details in wrinkles. So we had to maintain this relatively dense topology of our mesh. And then we have tearing happening, which reveals us, it pushes the story forward. Tearing happening, then some fire simulating. But rigid bodies, they are only there for a second. Like we have this not very beautiful but yet impactful spreading, like blasts of rigid bodies. Naturally, it has less priority than everything else. So that is why I will show you how it worked here. So for some reason, I have my volume loader glitching. I will reload it quickly. Okay, let's go. Well, you're telling me there are no more questions. I hardly believe that.
I'm having a heated debate with Store Go.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that I'm a creature of habit, and when things change, it does mess up because I forget. So any habits I've developed, I have to forget those habits and get new habits. But this particular thing about you can extrude an edge, and if you want the edge to go outwards, you have to turn it 90 degrees. It makes sense from the intuitive point. So I understand that, sometimes certain things make sense because we're used to them, because usually you want to extrude an edge sideways and not upwards. The counter argument to that would be you would expect things to move in the same direction, but it's not wrong. What Storgo is saying is not wrong, but we do need change sometimes to get things to function. Let's say better. I don't know if it's better, but yeah, things do change. I would apologize. I'm not going to apologize.
No,
I
you
just get
don't.
used to it.
You know what's the crazy part of it is, because I'm having a crazy experience right now, because usually I'm the one who discusses philosophical matters with you on these streams. And now I'm on another side and someone is there. I'm even a bit jealous.
Well, ask
So-
your questions, Sandro. Ask your questions.
You can see what is going on here. And I will tell you how I made it. But first of all, take a look. So this simulation, I already had my cached cloth, okay? Cached cloth. And upon that, I made another cache that is already a rigid body cache. And because my cloth was already cached, it simply acted as a collider for our rigid bodies. Therefore, rigid bodies are not completely alienated. You can see they are interacting with the cloth. I'm pointing with my finger. Yeah, funny thing. How do I show it to you? There, where I created a cube. Now, and pay attention. So these candies, yes, they are interacting with the cloth. So there are so many interesting things happening here in this scene. This is unbelievable, and such a simple result and outcome. Okay, anyways. So, and how I created this simulation, it is just hidden for right now, and I have, think I can simply show it in another scene easily. Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's a good idea. And by the way, I believe it is. It is also cached out. So very handy. So let's take a look. In the rigid body settings, you have this absolutely wonderful parameter that is called MoGraph selection. And MoGraph selection, you should know, you can create a tag, and you can see now that, okay, so we have a MoGraph selection, and we basically tell a solver, okay, so now those are simulating. Now, even before they are simulating, because you can clearly see, so when they are lit up, they are now open for simulation. But even before they are lit up, they start moving. And why so? Well, exactly because we have here plane effector. Yeah, that is moving it. So without plane effector, it would look something like that. And this is a crazy thing. Like, think about it. So you can simulate with and then you can further art direct your cached simulations and deform them with your effectors, right? If you worked with the MoGraph generators. Like, this is crazy. This is cool. And also a push apart. You can enhance it like further on. You can push them even more apart, and they will still be cached. Like, isn't that cool? The amount of possibilities is crazy. And of course, I didn't even utilize this follow position, follow rotation. Like, it's zeroed out. Normally, if you would like to introduce some animation, no matter which animation, like non-procedural or procedural MoGraph animation, to your simulation, you would like to use follow position, follow rotation for rigid bodies and mix animation for soft bodies and cloth bodies. And I used to do that stuff actually way before. Like, all times we had to utilize cloth belts with very smart hiding of them and animating influences. Nowadays, it's super interesting. Best feature.
We have a question from Hello Studio, which appeared earlier, but it's got a bit of a twist to it. And the question is how to achieve realistic cloth tears, such as angular pieces and threads at the edge. The realism, this is the tricky question, realism. The system itself will not, you can't give it a plane and say, I want to hold, this is cloth and I want the threads and all that. You'll have to go and create the threads using ropes. You need to art direct or control how the tears of the ropes are going to occur. You need to create a cloth that has topological features that will allow it to tear in very specific ways. So everything, the more you approach realism, the amount of work you need to put in for a little bit more realism usually is exponential. This is not just
that's right.
a limitation with cinema 4D or anything else. It is a limitation of the whole algorithmic approach. The computer doesn't know what a cloth is. It just has a bunch of points that move in certain directions and have certain constraints. And it's up to us to interpret how we would want something to look like. When you look at cloth tearing, you need to be able to translate that into what's going on, what's happening, where does the tearing occur. And that is the biggest challenge in general, even when you watch behind the scenes of how they made movies and so forth, why they use a lot of reference from the real world. And it's always down to how much work, how much information you put into the system so that it reacts the way you want it to. So the quick answer to that question is, you just need to define, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by, tearing? If you can't, and the thing is, it's not going to sound good, but it's a fact. If you cannot describe it, then it will be very difficult to implement it.
Absolutely.
So you need to see it, then describe it, so that you can develop a method that would do what the logic behind the description. And yeah, it just takes more and more work the more you want something to look realistic.
That is absolutely correct to say, and you should approach it like an artist. Like, you should really, okay, maybe I sculpt it, like literally, maybe and if I sculpt it, how do I sculpt it? How do I draw it? So you need to first imagine all those details. There is no recipe, and I always say, like, you want a recipe from me? There is no such thing. You crazy? No, there is no recipe. And photorealism and complexity and realism per se, it is always, of course, a matter of perception as well. We're not striving for realism. We're striving actually for performative hyperrealism, which tells you a story in the best way possible. So it's something even more than realism.
Yeah.
And it is always about layers of complexity and stacking them upon. I actually started my 3D career as a 3D modeler and 3D surfacing artist. And we always approached textures about, okay, what happened to this object? Tell me a story with your texture. And that's how you add insane amount of details until something is completely photorealistic. Also, you should mind the base, like PBR rendering guide, and technical stuff. So it's both. It is both knowing the technical base and then approaching it like an artist.
I do have what I'd like to advise people to do, and I'd like your Sandro's and Lionel's opinion on this as well. Let me just bring our faces up. Let's go a bit.
Sure.
This view or this view? This view. This is a bit more philosophical, but practical at the same time. You need to become explorers of whatever happens around you. Let's take the simplest thing. If I turn around, I look at the trees in my backyard, and if you want to make a tree, you look at a tree, you need to find the pattern, what that pattern is. What makes a tree an actual tree or a clothes hanger, right? A clothes hanger has, it's the main pole and things that come out the side where you hang your hat or your clothes. But it's definitely not a tree. So you need to be able to describe the differences of what is a clothes hanger as compared to what is a tree. Let's talk about Pyro and simulations. When a certain liquid burns, it burns differently than how wood burns. As you can see from our simulation, the defaults show something more like wood burning. It's more similar to that. If you want to make a chemical burn that has different characteristics, it burns at high temperatures, but it dissipates at higher rates and so forth. You need to look at that, and you need to be able to describe what's going on. Where is the flame going? How fast is it moving? What is the color? What kind of vortices does it generate? Is the smoke thick and thin? And this applies to everything, because most people here are visual artists. When you walk outside, your life is going to change. People are not going to like being around you. But that is the price you have to pay. When you're walking down the street and you see something, a weird brick wall. This is a nice brick wall. Why is it nice? What makes this brick wall look different from the other brick wall?
You find yourself stuck like that. Like what?
Exactly. But that is what, the people we look towards and we admire making these amazingly photorealistic things and so forth. A lot of them, and one of those people is David Hashimoto that does VFX and Chill every Friday. Don't miss it, every Friday, with Seth and Hashi. And Hashi always takes photographs or videos of whatever he sees. So suddenly you find, and we all have a camera in our pockets these days, right? There's no one that says, I don't have a camera. Yes, you do. And it's a pretty damn good one. When you go out and you see anything that's worth you looking at it for 1 second, take a snapshot, because, or take a little video so you can see how things change. You know, if I ask a question, what does a crystal look like? A quartz crystal. Currently, I've seen a quartz crystal in documentaries, in photographs, in videos 1,000,000 times. I cannot describe it. I don't have it in front of me. So if you do see a quartz crystal at a museum or somewhere else, take a video, move around. So then you have a reference when it's necessary. And buy a hard drive. You know, 4 terabyte hard drive now is what, 50, 60, $80 or something like that. Don't be cheap. Store that information. That's your life, right? You were walking down the street. Make it work for you. So that's my opinion. You need to start observing the world and describing it in boring ways. What do you guys think?
I think it is exactly so, but also you should dive really deep defining meanings of objects, because that is a funny thing. Like, we all live in a materialistic world, and we all are composed of molecules and atoms and so on. Like, we are composed of matter, but human beings do not only consist of matter, they also consist of what matters. So, and this is how you define a hanger from a tree, because a hanger, actually, you use it deliberately to hang your clothes on. You can actually hang a cloth on a tree. Please don't do that, only even if it's your tree. Like, respect nature. But you should dive deep into meanings of things, and also mind that people usually, as society, a civilization, create those meanings artificially, and yet they are part of our nature at the same time. So it is kind of standing on both legs, in a materialistic world and in a world of stories, of what matters, of how we describe things, of perception.
Lionel.
Yeah, you nailed it both. I was going to talk about ideas, the ideas of object. So you have an idea of a fire, but you don't know really what is a fire. A fire needs fuel, then it's going to burn, and so on and so on. But when you think about a fire, you think about something just moving like that. If you want to simulate a fire, you need to know how it works. And it's the same thing for everything. A circle, you have an idea of the circle, but you don't really know what is a circle. You have an idea of a wall, but you need to know the wall is made of bricks, then the mortar, then there will be a slight offset between each bricks, and so on and so on. Yeah, you have to analyze everything all the time. It's very tiring. Like Nozman said, it's going to be a very tiring, but it's rewarding too, because I like to analyze things anyway. So I guess that's why we make this job. We had this job as a teacher to analyze and then explain things to other.
Exactly.
Yeah, we are the maniacs about that.
Yes, maniacs. Yeah.
What I
What
found
you basically
funny,
said is a cause and matter, and then consequence. Everything in the world has it.
what is funny about what you two guys are saying is what differentiates artists from non-artists like myself. I couldn't give a rat's bottom of the why, and and all that. But I love the how. And it's interesting how, that little, the meaning, there is no meaning. That's me. But I'm not an artist. And that's what makes you better, much better than me at what you do. It's because you see meaning, you find meaning. Maybe there is meaning. There's not, but just saying here. But it's interesting to see the different mind frames behind these things. And that's why I have 2 pieces of advice for you. Only hang out with like-minded people so you can share the same interests and the passion of why this brick is this brick. And the second piece of advice is only hang out with not like-minded people so that you can learn new things, have nice arguments and discussions. So that 2 pieces of contradicting advice I will give you, and try and follow them both, each for their own purpose. So Sandro, do you have anything else to show us?
Yeah, if you allow me, I will go really quick about lighting and rendering and compositing because it is all secondary to our today's topic. But I will just finish my.
I'm having fun here, so let's do that and continue, please.
So first of all, you can see that. Okay, you remember that we have. Oh, by the way, this is a baked alembic, right? So yes, I have a baked alembic. Now talking about making your tears more realistic. Realistic is a funny concept. Plausible, let's say. So you can utilize both subdivision surface and smoothing modifier, which smoothes it out. You may lose some details, but you may get it smoother on tears. Maybe that is what you look for. It makes it less artificial. And, well, okay, you can maintain those details. You can actually use your vertex map to drive your deformer, smoothing deformer. But we will not dive too deep into this. Now, you remember that we have our vertex maps. And in this case, they are already baked. Now, as Nozman said, the program does not know what cloth is. It does not know even what material. Okay, it knows what material is, but it doesn't understand you right off the box what you want with that material. 3D is all about bunch of points and how you control it. Points with different coordinates and attributes. In this case, we have a vertex attribute. And by the way, when you understand this under the hood stuff about 3D softwares, you can do whatever you like in whatever program that suits you best. And I plug it also into a material. And here I have, of course, my Redshift material blender. And I have two materials. One is driven by my, that one, queried. That is the edge that allows me to make my emission. And then I have my burnt material. And let's see how it works. Now for the lighting, I didn't make HDRI on set. I simply found a night kind of sky with artificial lighting. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, something like that, something more or less applicable. And then I added some. It is not. It's not only the dome light, like it has a reduced intensity, and then I simply added up more area lights. And by the way, like talking about the artistic approaches, he's glowing from the inside, and this is exactly because I added a deliberate light source in there. That's the first thing. You can see already how materials stack with each other. So I have this burnt one, and then I have this emission on the edge, also masked through a Maxon noise. Now, always mind that if you have a deformed surface, you should always define in your noises and your procedural noises that they are, where is it? Oh, come on, you understand what I...
Input.
Oh, yes, UV vertex attribute. This is because by default it is object. No, it'll make a projection. And if you want your texture to stick onto a deformed surface, you should always make sure that you have UVs and then stick it and select this option here.
Sandro, I want to say something about what you showed with the light, the interior light earlier, right?
Yeah.
Because this is very important and ties when what we were discussing about 3D software not knowing what we're doing, right? The expectation for someone that thinks that simulations and Pyro imitate the real world would be well, the fire itself is going to, emit light. It's got emission, and the emission is going to propagate. No. Don't. You can do that to a certain degree. There's no doubt about that. There's no reason to do that. The example I always give is, if you have watched any classic Western movie, none of those towns were real. They only built the fronts of the shops. And yet we thought that these were towns. The same thing applies to 3D. Note of caution, it's all fake. Sorry to break it to you, but it's all fake.
Yes, you're completely right. And
adding the light.
We are the magicians.
Well, that's exactly it. You add the light in there because you know that there is an expectation of some sort of internal glow inside the cloth, and it makes it better than if you used just the emission.
Yeah,
So
this is also about principles of storytelling. Like you, before you are burning something, and everything is happening so fast in this particular scene, but still you have to try to build some anticipation and continuity through your storytelling. This would be a good thing.
exactly, and that is where the artist comes in, right? I would have expected the fire to do the same thing, but anyway.
Now, I
Right.
quickly remind you that we allow translucency in new standard materials by checking here thin walled and then just cranking up the subsurface, which doesn't work as a subsurface when you hit it this thin walled. It's not tied up to thickness. Now it's more like a simple translucency that you had in your legacy materials. So, by the way, I figured it out relatively mm, early on.
That's
Now
how
I
you'd
know
make tree leaves,
from
right?
Ellie.
You would make
Yes, yes.
yes,
I watched this videos Ellie made,
yeah,
and I was like, "Oh, that's how it's done in a new material."
Ellie.
Not
Hi,
so
Ellie.
obvious. So yeah, those are my AOVs, and I actually made tricky thing. So the first part of my scene is rendered without EXRs and stuff. It's a simple PNG sequence. And oh, by the way, there is a tree cut out that works as a light blocker here. So you can see some scene starts from here, and you can see a little soft shadow on this guy, so a little touch, and I was just open to experimentation. So this is not like gobo texture in your light source, but you can actually type here cutouts, and you have these beautiful assets like cutouts of trees. Maybe they can cast some shadows. So yes, I have a pretty standard and low sample render for a lot for the first half of my scene, and then I only started to render with those passes, and the main one was volume lighting. And why so, I will show you exactly, because on compositing you would really like to have lots of control over what is happening with your fire. And here actually I have this layer EXR. You can see this channel volume lighting. By the way, I did not utilize ACES workflow just in this case, although I know how to use it, simply because it wasn't our focus for today. Otherwise, I would have to explain a lot more. Yeah, so this is only my volume lighting. There is also a volume fog emission, which differs, and in render you actually get both. And what I like to do with my Pyro rendering through Redshift is to ignore volume fog emission, because volume lighting stores more details. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but this is my approach. Like, I'm using only that part. In this case, I'm stacking it upon my beauty, also masking, so that I have accents. So, and this is what compositing is all about. Like, you already have everything set up, but then you almost like manually paint in some stuff. And I have some effects here, and okay, I'm watching, okay, what colors I would like to be in this part of the scene or in the beginning, and they are slightly different. So there is a color scheme storytelling as well. Many things are dependent on the footage, actually, so I wish I had a better footage. I prefer doing it with the Red Giant Colorista, and I do not hesitate to animate some of the parameters. And there are also some complex attributes like clarity that allows you to enhance your texture contrast, let's say. And then, like, a final touch that I added up here was this absolutely gorgeous real lens flares from Red Giant as well. Like, I'm gonna Max on stream. I'm promoting Max. Good guy. So yeah, those are absolutely gorgeous and fantastic, and those are by far the best of lens flares available in After Effects. Sometimes they crash my whole system, so I prefer to use this fast quality if I choose best. Well, because actually it simulates, as far as I understand it correctly. Like, yes, those real flares are actually simulations.
Make sure you send any crash logs to Maxon, because they're working very, very hard to make all the tools as stable as possible.
Yeah, and I do not hesitate to hand paint some things, like to animate lights that drive this lens flare, and so on and so forth, and then just add some real smart motion blur. Although I had motion blur within my render, it is just to hide actually some troubles with my tracking. So that's basically it. And then the sound design. I do not know if you can hear what I'm doing. Can you hear it?
I'm afraid we don't. No.
No, I haven't
Okay,
heard
no.
any sound from.
Okay, anyways, and the last touch perhaps is that old school footage from Andrew Kramer's pack that is more than 10 years
Yes.
old. Yeah, there you go.
The same one, yeah.
The
With the
gift
flower.
keeps on giving.
Okay, I'm proudly exiting my Untitled project. Can you imagine it is Untitled project classics? By the way, if my screen is still turned on, I used to film on iPhone using this wonderful filming app. I recommend to everybody. It fixes your exposure. It fixes your frame rate. You're able to film in logarithmic color space, and yeah, so it's gorgeous.
Is it the Filmic camera, whatever it's called?
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
I buy all these apps. I don't use them because as I said, I have no artistic inclination, but I collect software, throw away some of my disposable income. So let's see if we have any quick questions. Maria Villanueva, about AI. We're not going to discuss AI. It's a big topic. Imagine if you were discussing cars when, back when Ford was producing but anyway, I think there just needs to be a switch to switch it off, and we all should have a version of that switch. Just press the button, turn it off. That's the only way humanity is going to survive. Let's see. Ahmed says, can link if there's any simulation basics from scratch. If you go to Cineversity, I have 2 series, one for Pyro and one for simulations. Anything more basic than that, we don't have anything. You will find a lot of content on Cineversity generally that includes simulation as well. But I'm not aware of something. I'm not aware. I'm sure it exists.
It is quite user friendly. And what we made tonight was upper intermediate, because we mixed everything together, also describing how to solve artistic tasks. It was the whole mess of a task.
Amazing. So with that, I think that Sandro's today's presentation has come to an end. I'm very pleasantly surprised to see, these are relatively similar techniques, right? It's just that you take the same technique, you stack it on top of each other, and you can get a brilliant result, and then fix it in post as well. And that's what always amazes me. There's nothing overtly complex in these technologies, and there's information about these things. And yet, if you put in the time and have the patience and the attention to detail, you can create some beautiful things. So Sandro, I thank you very much for the presentation. Are you going to be with us in the coming weeks as well?
I'd love to, actually, and I'm looking forward to seeing Lionel's presentation. So yes, expect me next Monday for sure.
Excellent. And Lionel, any final words before I do the housekeeping in reverse order?
Well, no, you said it. A lot of simple techniques all together make a complex stuff. So it's very interesting because there was everywhere. I mean, you could have made like 10 tutorials with this one. I mean,
Yeah.
mix ammo, fire, cloth, rigid body. There was everything.
Excellent. So let me switch to my screen over here and hide our otherwise beautiful faces. Right. Take a snapshot. Jeez. All right, that's it. So in reverse order, let's do the reverse housekeeping. You can see Sandro's work on Instagram and on Behance, and I can say it's quite impressive. Go to Cineversity to learn all the things that you want to learn about Cinema 4D and all the other Maxon products, or go to the old Cineversity, cineversity.com, to find the older but still very much relevant tutorials about Cinema 4D. Don't forget to claim your free t-shirt for the month of November. It's November already. Wow. And use the password Maxon Simulation, all caps, one word. You only pay for postage and folding. I think folding is expensive, but packaging is free. If you want to become a certified pro user or a certified trainer, go to the topics list of Cinema 4D's certification page. So you go certification, you scroll down the pro user certification, you click on the certification topics, and you get here. And if you're learning Cinema 4D or want to see if you know everything required as far as we think in order to use Cinema 4D effectively and be productive, just go here, twirl these down, and look at all these wonderful topics. And don't forget to ask questions. I can be reached on Twixer at NosemanGR. And yeah, Max certifications, go to the ZBrush YouTube channel to see amazing content and tutorials for ZBrush. The Maxon YouTube channel that has a lot of stuff, I have to say. The Maxon training team, where all the videos, the reruns of these shows we have every week. You can watch them and replay slow motion or fast forward, whatever you prefer. And of course, for any ongoing events online, in person, anywhere around the world, go to the maxon.net events. And hopefully I haven't forgotten anything. I want to thank Carl Johnston and the background that's producing for us. And today I didn't mess anything up. So Carl will be extremely, extremely happy. So here we are. Here are beautiful faces again. I bid you all farewell. And we'll see you next week. Invite your friends and family to watch our beautiful shows. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure.